Thank you. Good morning, Service Learning Champions. That's what you are, right? Champions. Absolutely. Emma, thank you so much. You know, I get that Corporation for National Community Corporation Service messed up too, so we're in good company together. Thank you, Lisa. Inspiring words. Kalita, Steve, my brothers and sisters in service. Appreciate all three of you. Really do. So the Corporation for National and Community Service, who are we? Here's who we are, 75,000 AmeriCorps members strong. Vistas, NCCC, 330,000 Senior Corps volunteers, foster grandparents, senior companions, RSVP, the Social Innovation Fund, the Volunteer Generation Fund. It's wonderful. 4 million additional Americans volunteering alongside these AmeriCorps members and these Senior Corps volunteers. Total 700,000 volunteers participate in our days of service, like Martin Luther King Day of Service or 9/11 Day of Service and Remembrance. If you add all of the service volunteers up, the national service participants and volunteers, we're about 4 to 5 million strong. So we're in, if you look at a map and roll it out, of all the locations that national service is serving in, we're in 70,000 locations across America. So because of that, just about any place that I step out, any door that I would step out and holler, AmeriCorps, Senior Corps, are you out there? Someone responds back, I'm here. So I'm going to give this a shot. This is risky. Because, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to give it a shot. AmeriCorps, Senior Corps, volunteers or AmeriCorps members or alumni, are you out there? It's great, it worked. I love it. It works every time. I love the reach. We're about 800,000 AmeriCorps alums now. Soon we'll hit that 1 million AmeriCorps alum. And I think that maybe that 1 million AmeriCorps alum is sitting in this room. Couldn't that be possible? That you're sitting here? I hope so. I want you to join up. I love service learning. I had exposure to it in Florida when I was heading up the Governor's Commission on Volunteerism. And Joe Foldman, and I hope Joe's here, Joe was leading the Learn and Serve program for Florida. And Joe's a great advocate, true champion for service learning. And there's so many stories that Joe exposed us to. We got to see service learning firsthand, hear stories from him. One in particular that I really liked that he shared one time was there was this group of fifth graders who were building a community garden next to a historic home in Tallahassee, Florida. And they were going to emulate the type of products in their garden that would also be known for the mid-1800s. They had some funding to actually build the garden. They wanted to make sure it was properly built and sustained, so they were doing things like providing an irrigation system for it and other things. They were literally meeting with contractors, the fifth graders were, and they had their little board and they were interviewing and taking bids from area contractors to help them with the project. Well, they met with some irrigation companies this particular day to field so they could ask questions about their product, the cost, the productivity, the speed in which they could perform the irrigation system. And they went back and they were meeting about to make the decision. And one of the fifth graders says, well, I don't recommend that we hire Mr. Brown. And one of them said, well, why not? He says, well, I don't know if you noticed, but he had a pocket with cigarettes in it. And I just don't think that's a good thing. So I don't think we should hire Mr. Brown. Well, the teacher said, well, Sally, I understand your point, but really in a business decision, you need to keep it to a business decision. This should be based on the product, the expediency in which he could deliver the product, and the price, and the quality that you can ascertain that he would come to. She said, well, that's all fine and good, but we're not hiring Mr. Brown. So I love the experiences that we see from the service learning experiences that are here, that we see every single day. And that one, I just love. They didn't hire Mr. Brown. True story. The benefits that we have with the education system are very, very empowering, very powerful. Service learning causes our students to get engaged, to come to school. It helps academic achievement, puts young people on a pathway to success in school and out of school, oftentimes. It really is one of the exciting components that I like about when we have young people engaged in service. I have a friend that who had a problem with her son who was not attending school all the time, and he was not engaged in service learning. He wasn't engaged in many things that were very exciting to him. And unfortunately, one day he decided to skip school. So parents weren't home. He picked up the phone to call, because in this particular school, they would call the parents if they didn't hear about why you were absent. So he picked up the phone, and he, the student, Jeffrey is his name, called the school himself. He said, "Hello, my son Jeffrey will be out sick today." And the school secretary said, "Oh, who am I speaking with?" And he said, "This is my father speaking." It's just too bad that Jeffrey didn't have a desire to go to school, but if he had service learning and if he was excited about school, he wouldn't try to trick the school and not go to school, right? He would want to go to school. That's what I love about service learning. It really excites all of us about learning, and we make a difference as well. All right, so I want to try something. Mark had you standing up, so I'm going to try something different. For those of you who do not know what Simon Says game is, here's how it works. If you say Simon Says and give an instruction, you follow the instruction. But if you do not say Simon Says and you give an instruction, you do not follow the instruction. And if you do, you're out of the game. I'm going to try a very short version of this. Simon says, if you're under the age of 80, please stand. Simon says, if you're between the age of 40 and 80, please sit. Everyone over 25, sit down. Busted a few of you. Simon says, everyone over 25, sit down. Simon says, everyone under 25 remain standing. Very good. Who should be standing are those under 25. Let me tell you about it. I want you to keep standing. You are special. You are the type of person that I want to hire. You have a desire of beyond, sort of a service above self mentality. You're wanting to better yourself and others around you. I've hired in my 30 years a lot of people, and I look for not what's on the paper. I look for what's inside the individual, in their heart and their soul. And what I love about young people engaged in service learning is you are the type of person that will make great citizens, great employees, great team members, great parents, great aunts and uncles, great community leaders. Thank you for choosing service learning to better not just yourself, but for everyone around you. We applaud you. Simon says you may sit down. So for the rest of you, those of you who might consider yourselves, we'll say grown-ups. I don't feel like I'm grown up yet, but for those of you who say you're grown-ups, I want to thank you too. Interesting, recently, the White House Council on Community Solutions, which was a council that President Obama put together to look for solutions across America, much of which involving our young people, had a year-long study and wonderful people that came together to come up with wonderful ideas, policies, and other programs that could lift up Americans throughout the country. And on their closing day, they had a roundtable at the White House that I was privileged to be able to attend. And one of the panels was some wonderful young people that they had sought out to hear from them and listen to what their advice was. And I was actually surprised because just the posing question was to the young people. They were under the age of 24. Most of them were teenagers. They said, what do you need from us as adults? And the answers really surprised me. They said, we need you to listen to us. We want, as young people, we want you to care about us. We want you to give us your time. We want respect. We want to feel independent. We want to be heard. And I thought that was interesting. So many things I didn't think would come from these young people. So I started to ask that question and listen to other places I went. And I heard the same thing. But basically, our youth want us to care, listen, show our concern, let them be heard. So for the grown-ups in the room, and I'll put myself in that bucket, let's let that be our challenge. Let's let our young people guide us, lead us, and let's be great listeners. Is that a good deal? Grown-ups are okay with that? All right, we're going to do that. Great. Kalita and I had a great conversation last night over dinner, and we talked about the uniqueness of service learning. And it occurred to both of us, I'm sure it's occurred to her a lot more than before last night, but it certainly occurred to me, that service learning is much more than a good idea. It's actually a great strategy, not to teach us, we've talked about those benefits, not only to teach us, but it's a good strategy to solve problems in America. A strategy for disaster response, a strategy for education, a strategy for healthy futures, a strategy for the environment. It's a great strategy. And I want to help you, Kalita and Lisa and Steve and everyone else here. I want to help us think about how national service and the volunteers that we work with and serve with can work together with service learning as a strategy for the solutions that we're seeking every day. So I'll pledge that to you. I think it's very important. So our commitment at the Corporation for National Community Service still remains. Some of you remember when the Corporation for National Community Service were funding the Learn and Serve program. It's very, very difficult that isn't funded any longer. Some of you are new to us, our family, and don't remember that, but many of you do. Over the years, about $703 million was invested over the last 18 years from the Corporation for National and Community Service. So while it's not funded today, don't let that be wasted. It's now been institutionalized in many education arenas. We've had the opportunity to train tens of thousands of teachers and educators, engage tens of thousands and millions, about 1.8 million to 2 million per year in the latter years, young people in service. So let's certainly not waste 1 minute of that investment. Let's find ways, as Kalita said earlier, to partner so that we can continue this. We're continuing it in a different way. We have an AmeriCorps application that we just closed out recently, and we included in it a prioritization for service learning in our what we call strategic considerations. So if an application came to us and in the considerations supported service learning, that's going to get a second look, which I think is important. We now have performance measures at the Corporation for National and Community Service. And one of our 16 agency-wide performance measures will track how many students see gains in academic engagement through service learning. These are small but important ways that we can continue to support the service learning sector. We have days of service grants, oftentimes go to service learning organizations for that very purpose. On our Martin Luther King Day of Service, or 9/11 and other days that we will find the funds to support. The President's Higher Education Community Service Honor Roll that I just announced the winners last week in Washington, D.C., has helped us recognize some of the nation's most important colleges and universities with an outstanding commitment to service learning. So we're still trying to, with the voice that we have, trying to keep it in the forefront. Many of you are very familiar with the National Service Learning Clearinghouse, which has been the nation's most comprehensive service learning resource, and the field has relied on this wonderful, wonderful tool, and many of you contributed to it and placed great practices in the clearinghouse. There was some concern, is the clearinghouse going to stay, go away, what's going to happen with it? And I'm proud to share with you that the clearinghouse is going to stay in a little bit of a different form. We're going to insert most of it into our knowledge network so that you will have tools that you can continue to, and it's free to you, to go and search and use as you're expanding your horizon around service learning activities. So I'm real pleased with that. So there's so many ways we're going to keep trying to keep service learning from the Corporation of National and Community Service, whether it's through our foster grandparent program, Senior Companions, AmeriCorps, NCCC, VISTA. We really are going to keep this dialogue, and I've pledged that to Kalita and to Steve to continue to do so. I just need all of you to continue with me to think creatively. Let's figure out ways we can collaborate and continue building the stage that we have built together. The good news is education is on the forefront of so many national leaders and state leaders. I've been meeting with education leaders today, this week in Colorado, and I am really encouraged. Education is the #1 priority for virtually every governor in the state, and all the states, and every member of Congress I talk to has a conversation about education. That is great, and we need to continue that, and we have a great solution together with service learning. So I want to close with what I think is an important story that I heard recently that is kind of interesting. It troubled me a little bit. A friend of mine was at a dinner party. It was a business roundtable. A lot of people from different walks of life were there. There was a teacher at this one table. There were a couple of bankers, business leaders, some nonprofit organizations. And there was this one very loud executive who was a venture capitalist. And he was pretty brazen, talking kind of loud, not really listening to others. And he started a rampage about American employers and today's life in America. And he said, look, I'm a venture capitalist. I invest in companies that make things. It's important, we've got to contribute. And the opportunities I invest in, people get jobs from. There was a teacher sitting next to him. And he looked over, her name was Susan, and he said, Susan, he said, come on, he says, you're a teacher. You know, really, I mean, how important is that? You know, what are you making? What do you make? Really, be honest with me. So Susan looked at him and said, you know what I make? I make kids wonder. I make kids work harder than they ever thought they could. I make kids think. I make them apologize and mean it. I make them read and read and read some more. I make them write and understand it. I make them understand that if they're really smart, they'll follow their hearts and they'll follow and make good decisions on a pathway to success. And I told them, if someone tries to judge you by what you make, then pay no attention to them. You know what I make? I make a difference. What do you make? And you make a difference. And Susan made a point, right? Susan made a point. You make a difference. Every person in this room. Education is important. Teachers make a difference. Educators make a difference. Students make a difference. And we all together will change lives. God bless each and every one of you. Follow me on Twitter. I'll follow you on Twitter. And make sure you like us on Facebook and tweet out this great conference. Thank you for including me.